Hi, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Topic of discussion today is achieving visibility, compliance, and threat detection in the cloud. A customer's view. That customer happens to be Russ Shupert, is a Senior Director of Security Engineering at Veeva Systems. Russ, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today.
My pleasure, Tom.
How about you take just a moment to introduce yourself and Veeva Systems, of course, and explain what your role is with the organization.
Sure. Veeva Systems, our focus is building software for the life sciences community. We focus primarily on pharma and biotech, consumer health, med tech. But we also build software for consumers goods, chemical, or the cosmetic industry. So, anything that deals with life sciences, medical, human interaction, and human development.
And your team in particular, what's the mission? What's the scope?
Sure. In security engineering, we are the team that collaborates with all of the product teams that makes all of the software. So we're responsible for all the security architecture and design, authentication designs, things like that. Responsible for the security tools that come into the company, whether they're homegrown or whether they're purchased, third-party systems. We do all the DevSecOps, so all the automation of those tools, responding to threats. And then my team's final core competency is offensive security. So all of our internal pen testing, external pen testing, bug bounties, things like that.
Observability in any environment is a challenge. In the cloud, it's magnified. What particular challenges did you face when it comes to observability?
The biggest challenge with cloud companies, especially at Veeva, since we were early adopters of cloud technology as our core business model, is securing the cloud with traditional data center tools, right? There wasn't a lot of technology that was specifically built for the cloud environment. So finding tools, finding systems that early on that you could adapt to leverage in the cloud while still looking at startups or traditional companies that were coming out with cloud offerings were a lot of the initial challenges moving to the cloud. Thankfully, 5-6 years, I think we've been in Amazon now 7.5 years, going on 8. And in that time, there's been a lot of companies that have come out with a lot of really good tools that we have evaluated across the spectrum and selected for various security needs.
What were some of the different options, different approaches you looked at to overcome these challenges?
Honestly, some of it was build it ourselves, right? What do we need, that thing to do from a minimal functional set to ensure security of whatever that particular space was, whether it was network security or firewall security or whatever the technology stack was. Leveraging native tools, by that cloud provider. We're predominantly an Amazon shop. So, leveraging as many of the Amazon tools or other cloud company tools that we could, while we were then bringing in startups or other technologies that we were adapting from more traditional methods. So it was very challenging. The cloud security options have grown significantly in the last 2.5 to 3 years, and not just grown significantly as far as the number of tools, but the maturity and capability of those tools. Cloud security is almost on par with traditional data center security and the offerings that are now available.
So Russ, ultimately you made a choice to go with ThreatStack.
Yep.
What were the advantages for you? What were you looking for?
Well, if you were to ask me that question 2 years ago, it would have been a different answer. I'll be honest, the events of some third-party libraries or suppliers that were hacked, or their source code, released to the public, or vulnerabilities being in the source code. I think everybody knows I'm talking about SolarWinds. Veeva was not a SolarWinds customer. But that incident, that worldwide incident, the things that happened made us reevaluate what we do from a security standpoint in how we trust third parties, with whatever that security component is that we're using. So that issue or that incident really made us reevaluate a bunch of things, and that reevaluation led us to ThreatStack in this particular space that ThreatStack operates. The biggest number one issue was we don't want security tools in our environment that operate or run as root or privileged or admin access. We want tools that we tell to elevate when we want to do something versus it just running at a heightened privilege. ThreatStack in the space that they are in the offerings that they are the only platform when we purchased them that had an offering that worked that way. In addition to that, the number of things that ThreatStack does, the number of integrations with the various cloud companies that we use, whether it's Amazon and their CloudTrail, whether it's the Azure integrations or others, they natively, seamlessly integrate with these cloud providers and provide us immediate data that's correlated, that reduces our false positives. Previous tools that we used, we were seeing, no kidding, 90% plus false positive rates. Out of the box with ThreatStack, that percentage is probably under 20% false positive. As we continue to tune the system, we're seeing, we're seeing even lower rates. So the biggest selection outside of the low privileged model that ThreatStack runs in is reliable, actionable data that lets me look at things that are important versus all the noise that comes with a lot of tools in the space. ThreatStack has done an amazing job building and tuning and progressing their tool, maturing their tool to provide you meaningful data when you install it. Yes, there's tuning, but it's much less than you've had to do with any other vendor that we've had.
Now, what you described sounds like sort of what I would call a holistic approach. What you're getting from ThreatStack, which of course is now part of F5. Talk a bit more about the benefits and what you've realized from this relationship.
Yeah, I mean, early on, we just got fully deployed with all of our components in August of 2022. But some of the immediate benefits that we're seeing is, reliable, actionable data, and not just snippets of data, right? A lot of tools will give you an alert, they'll give you a little bit of detail, but then you have to log into like 3 or 4 or 5 different back screens in order to really piece together what the system is trying to tell you. The biggest thing that ThreatStack does that is, to me, a differentiator beyond the low privilege model is they give you everything you need at your fingertips. It doesn't matter if it's a network threat, if it's a CloudTrail threat, it doesn't matter what threat is. They tell you with detail everything that security operations or that security engineer technician needs to know to evaluate, is this legitimate? And they also give you some recommendations on how to mitigate it. So ThreatStack has made our lives significantly easier. The other thing that they do in the case of an incident, of a real world incident that you're dealing with, they correlate the data, all of the data that you need from both the external source coming in as well as any internal sources that are being impacted faster than any other tool that we've seen. So you truly know your blast radius and your external threat. And if you use the MITRE kill chain, you know where in the kill chain you're at very quickly and then how to react. So they've given us a lot of additional insight and capability that frankly we just didn't have before, and it's made our lives just that much easier.
Russ, when you push to quantify it, what are the numbers you look at to measure the success or the outcomes of this relationship?
Honestly, it's actionable intelligence, right? Prior to ThreatStack, we had folks in operations, they would spend 100% of their time running down alerts only to have, a 90+% false positive rate. So that's a lot of effort, a lot of hours and cycles that we were spending tracing down, things that weren't important or that weren't real. We have gained in our security operations team, we've gained about 85% of that time back. We can focus on other things, real threats, maturing tools, tuning tools, because ThreatStack, legitimately tells us what is going on. So the false positive rate is very low and getting lower all the time.
Now, how easy was ThreatStack to implement? What was the process for you?
The process was very simple. It took us less than 4 hours to get fully integrated with CloudTrail. Veeva has hundreds of Amazon accounts under our master root. We segment our systems out differently than probably a lot of traditional technology companies to minimize blast radius and damage. As a result of that, and ThreatStack will tell you, Veeva probably has one of the most complex cloud deployment models anywhere in the world. We do that to segment, our customers' data in different products to minimize, potential impact of a real world incident. With that scale that Veeva has, ThreatStack was able to very quickly roll out. We have 31 core product teams at Veeva, and we started deployment in We started the stand-up of the ThreatStack UI and the initial configuration in January. We were done by the second week of February. And then we rolled all of the agents out to the entire infrastructure, dev, test, and production, and QA environments from February to the end of August. So every piece of our infrastructure now has ThreatStack running on it.
And here we are, believe it or not, the latter third of the year. As you look ahead to 2023, what's the roadmap for you? And I wonder, how does F5's acquisition of ThreatStack impact your plans, if at all?
Well, F5 has always been a great security company. I've used them in other places I've worked, more traditional data centers. I mean, F5 is a known entity, and their quality has always been top notch. So the acquisition of ThreatStack by F5 seems to be a very natural fit, especially with where they're trying to go with cloud security. So one of my objectives, one of our security objectives by our Chief Information Security Officer, is to minimize the number of vendors that we have, in-house. We don't want 30 tools and 30 vendors. That just becomes a complicated relationship. It's 30 different UIs that we have to deal with. It's 30 different systems we have to integrate, and it creates a lot of complexity that we don't want. So where we can, where it's meaningful, we're trying to reduce the number of security vendors. Even if we don't get all of our wants, as long as we have all of our must-haves, we would rather focus on fewer vendors, more integration, more centralization of information and data, and being able to respond to threats quicker than deal with lots of vendors. And F5, their acquisition of ThreatStack just helps to enable that that conversation further. There's a lot of other offerings that F5 has that, as we continue to mature, that we will consider.
Very well articulated. Russ, I appreciate your time and thank you for your candor today.
Sure thing.
Again, the topic has been achieving visibility, compliance, and threat detection in the cloud, a customer's view. You just heard from Russ Shupert. He's a Senior Director of Security Engineering at Veeva Systems. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you for your time and attention today.